Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of like absolute precision.
Right. Yeah. Like it's totally objective.
Exactly. You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points at the screen and goes, there it is, that's the problem.
Right.
But when you step into the world of, organizational design and business management, suddenly that x-ray machine is it's broken. We look at a struggling company or even just a struggling team, and we automatically assume the fix is just adding more.
Adding more layers, yeah.
Right. More rules, more meetings, more key performance indicators to track the other key performance indicators.
It's exhausting.
It really is. We think that adding all this structural weight to control a team is the very definition of good management. But what if it's not? What if the very things we are doing to, quote unquote, manage our teams are actually destroying our companies from the inside out?
Yeah. And the irony there is that the harder a manager squeezes, the more performance just, slips right through their fingers.
Right.
So we're unpacking a profoundly fascinating, highly analytical text for this deep dive. And it presents a fundamental paradigm shift.
A huge shift.
Yeah. The core argument is that modern business needs to make this critical leap from what the text calls system thinking, which is that obsessive building of complex, fragile management structures, to an entirely different operational philosophy. And they call this law-based thinking.
Right. And to set the stage for you listening at home, law-based thinking is essentially about discovering and writing the underlying, gravity of business.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, it's about creating a self-running ecosystem rather than a, micromanaged dictatorship. Now, reading through these sources, I have to say the terminology gets intensely complex.
Oh, absolutely. It's very dense.
Yeah, we were talking about some incredibly dense, highly technical jargon, but our mission today is to decode all of that together.
Let's do it.
We're going to strip away the academic language and look under the hood to reveal this groundbreaking blueprint for achieving what the text calls a zero management state.
But, before we can understand how to actually engineer that zero management reality, we really have to hold a mirror up to the current paradigm.
Right. We have to look at what's broken first.
Exactly. We have to understand why our traditional way of working is so fundamentally flawed. So the text does this by contrasting the underlying assumptions of these two paradigms, starting with system thinking.
Okay.
And this approach, it treats a company like a precision clock. Managers operate under the belief that you can engineer human behavior the same way a watchmaker engineers, like a Swiss timepiece.
So it's highly mechanical. You assume that if you just add enough complex parts, new compliance rules, tighter budgets, constant audits, more reporting layers, that everything is just going to tick perfectly on time.
Yeah, but the fatal flaw in that mechanical assumption is that human beings are not gears.
Right. They push back.
They do. And when you treat a dynamic organization like a static machine, it creates what physicists call entropy increase. Yeah, so in thermodynamics, entropy is basically the gradual decline into disorder. In a business context, when you try to fight off that disorder by slapping on more and more layers of control, the system actually becomes unbearably rigid. It becomes fragile.
That makes total sense.
Right. So managers end up spending all their energy checking the gears, auditing the time cards, verifying reports, rather than, actually moving the company forward.
And then you get the ultimate symptom of this disease, which the text refers to as one-man rule anxiety, which, I think everyone listening has either worked for that person or, let's be honest, actually been that person. It's the boss who has become the exhausted final court of appeals for every single conflict. They have to approve every single vacation request, every minor budget tweak, every little customer dispute.
Because trying to plug every hole in a sinking ship with your own fingers is just completely unsustainable. It burns out the leader, and honestly, it infantilizes the team.
It really reminds me of playing a never-ending game of whack-a-mole.
Oh.
You smash one problem down with a new company policy, and two more pop up because the new policy just slowed down production.
Exactly.
You fix a leak in sales with a strict new approval process, and suddenly the legal department is backed up by 3 weeks because of the new compliance rules you literally just instituted.
It's just a cascade of friction.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
So rather than building a better hammer for the whack-a-mole game, the text is suggesting we need to study the actual water currents underneath the ship.
Right. And that's where law-based thinking abandons the clock metaphor entirely.
Yeah.
It views a company not as a machine to be tuned, but as a dynamic field governed by objective physics-like laws.
Like commercial gravity.
Yes, exactly. Think of it as commercial gravity. The underlying premise is profound. It says, if you go with the flow of these objective laws of human nature and economics, you break through obstacles with incredible momentum.
You become unstoppable.
You really do.
Yeah.
But if you fight these laws, if you try to force dynamic human nature into your artificial little clockwork gears, you are punished. You get severe friction, burnout, and eventual collapse.
So we're shifting from trying to control every moving part to setting up an environment that just naturally pulls things in the right direction.
That's the goal.
But that brings up a massive practical question for me. If we stop treating the company like a clock and we abandon this top-down pressure, how do things actually get done? I mean, somebody still has to make the product and sell it.
Right. Which brings us to the first core pillar of law-based thinking, and that is engineering human motivation.
Okay.
Because under system thinking, the entire engine runs on top-down pressure. It's just a constant game of bosses forcing metrics, pushing quotas, and, shoving directives down the chain of command.
The classic, do this because I said so, and if you hit this completely arbitrary number, you get a 3% bonus.
Yeah, exactly. It's all push and no pull, and that requires immense continuous energy from leadership. Right. Law-based thinking flips this by using what the text calls a reverse causal approach. So instead of pushing people from the top down, you tap into the most basic, undeniable human instinct, which is the drive to seek advantage and avoid harm.
Okay, I really have to jump in here.
Go for it.
Because this is the exact part of the source material where the language just explodes into a completely different dimension.
Oh, it really does.
I was reading this and wondering if I was looking at a business manual or like the schematic for a nuclear reactor.
It gets intense.
Let me just read a few of these phrases for you. The text talks about the 3-layer, 6-stage, 6-5-4-3-2-1 target law.
Yep.
It mentions the FGT flywheel logic formula, the F of T exponential jump formula, and, okay, my absolute personal favorite, the TDF triangular reverse performance resonance.
A classic.
I mean, what on earth is TDF triangular reverse performance resonance? That sounds like a hyperdrive part on a spaceship. What does this actually mean for you and me working on a regular team?
I know, it is incredibly dense, and it's so easy to get lost in the academic translation. But let's actually decode the mechanics of these terms, because they aren't just buzzwords, they are structural blueprints.
Okay, lay it on me.
Let's take your favorite, the TDF triangular reverse performance resonance. So resonance in physics means vibrations amplifying each other.
Right.
In this business context, triangular refers to perfectly aligning 3 distinct anchors of incentive. And usually those 3 anchors are the company's ultimate profit, the customer's ultimate success, and the employee's personal financial gain.
Okay, so if those 3 things are vibrating at the same frequency, they basically amplify each other.
That is the resonance.
Got it.
In a traditional system, those 3 things often fight each other. Think about it. The employee wants a bigger commission, so they oversell a product.
Oh, yeah.
The customer gets a bad product and leaves. The company loses money. That is dissonance. Triangular reverse performance resonance means designing the compensation and goal structure so mathematically tight that the only way the employee gets their maximum payout is if the customer achieves massive, verifiable success, which then automatically triggers high margin retention for the company.
And what about the reverse part of it?
The reverse part just means you start with the ultimate desired outcome, the company's success, and work backward to set the daily incentive.
Okay, wait, let me push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Because if there are 0 managers enforcing the rules and you just unleash a bunch of highly motivated people to chase an incentive, doesn't that just become Lord of the Flies?
Well,
I mean, if you tell a sales team, go make as much money as possible, the floor is yours, people will inevitably find loopholes. They'll game the system, they'll cut corners, and leave a huge mess for someone else to clean up.
They absolutely will. But that's only if you are using system thinking metrics. A static metric is super easy to game. But that is exactly why the text introduces that other crazy term you mentioned, the 3-layer, 6-stage, 6-5-4-3-2-1 target law.
Oh, right, the countdown one.
Exactly. This isn't just about throwing money at people. This specific law is a framework for preventing that exact Lord of the Flies scenario you just mentioned.
How so?
The numbers 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 represent a cascading chain of time horizons and operational layers. It literally forces the organization to mathematically link a 6-year strategic vision down to a 5-quarter operational plan all the way down to the daily actions of the lowest level employee.
Oh, wow. So you can't just hack the daily metric because it has to mathematically serve the 6-year vision.
Exactly. You structure the environment so that short-term selfish hacks are actively punished by the ecosystem itself, not by a manager.
That's wild.
Right. You don't need a boss to tell the employee not to cut corners because the 654-321 target law ensures their personal payout is dependent on the long-term viability of what they just built. You are setting up a gravitational field. The team naturally falls toward the company's goal because it is in their absolute best calculated interest to do so.
Okay, so to use a physical analogy, you aren't strapping a jetpack to a boulder and trying to steer it up a mountain with a remote control.
No, definitely not.
You're just tilting the floor. You tilt the floor, and the marble rolls exactly where you want it to go, purely because gravity is doing the heavy lifting.
That is perfect. Designing the slope is the core job of leadership in this paradigm. You design the slope, you don't micromanage the marble.
So now that we have a team naturally motivated by this triangular resonance, the floor is tilted, the marble is rolling, what exactly are they driving forward?
Right.
Because it can't just be about working hard for the sake of working hard. This sort of shifts our focus from human psychology to the actual structural business model itself.
It does. And the text points out a massive foundational flaw in how system thinking views a business model.
Which is?
Traditional managers tend to view their business as a series of isolated static dashboards. They look at a standalone sales number or a separate profit margin or maybe an isolated quarterly retention rate. Law-based thinking completely replaces this static, disconnected dashboard with what it calls flywheel iteration logic.
Okay, let's break down flywheel iteration logic, because a flywheel is a heavy mechanical wheel used to store and increase momentum. How does that apply to a spreadsheet?
Good question. The text outlines a specific ABC flywheel model. It basically posits that a business is an end-to-end mutually causal reinforcing loop.
Right.
The logic dictates that the result of A inevitably triggers an increase in B. That increase in B brings a massive leap in C. And the crucial part, that leap in C loops all the way back around to amplify A.
Can we ground this in a real-world example?
Sure.
What does A, B, and C actually look like for a team that's trying to implement this?
Let's look at a hypothetical software company. In a traditional system, the product team, the sales team, and the customer support team all operate in their own silos.
Right, they barely talk to each other.
Exactly. But in an ABC flywheel, you link them structurally. Point A is the product team relentlessly fixing bugs to make the software completely self-serve.
Okay.
This inevitably drives point B, which is a massive reduction in customer support tickets.
Makes sense.
Because support costs plummet, those financial resources are automatically routed to point C, which is highly targeted sales and marketing. That surge in sales brings in more revenue and user data, which loops right back to point A, funding even better product development.
It literally feeds itself. And because of the incentive structures we talked about earlier, the product team actually wants to reduce the support tickets rather than just hitting some arbitrary quota of code shipped.
Yes. It is a perpetual motion ecosystem.
Yeah.
You aren't just hitting a static target, you are feeding energy into a loop. And this is where that F of T exponential jump formula comes into play.
Oh, okay, another formula.
Right. When a traditional company grows, it grows linearly.
Yeah.
Add 10 employees, get 10 units of output. But when a flywheel starts spinning, the removal of internal friction means the energy compounds. The jump happens because the resources previously wasted on internal politics and inefficiency are suddenly being poured directly into forward momentum.
Wow. For everyone listening right now, take a second and visualize your own workplace goals. The things your boss asks you about on Friday afternoons.
Yeah, think about it.
Are you just chasing a static number on a dashboard? Are you just trying to get a metric from 85% to 90% so you can check a box? Or are you feeding a step in a self-sustaining loop?
Exactly.
Does your success automatically make the next department's role easier, which then loops back to give you more resources? Because if you're just chasing a static number, you're trapped in system thinking.
And that static chasing requires constant, exhausting external energy. I mean, the moment the manager stops yelling about the 90% target, the number drops.
Every time.
In a true ABC flywheel, the momentum sustains itself.
Which really brings us to the reality check of all of this. If the team is self-motivated because we tapped into reverse causal human instincts, and the business model is a perpetual motion flywheel, what happens to the day-to-day grind?
Right.
What happens to the Tuesday morning status updates?
This is honestly the most radical operational shift in the entire text. Under system thinking, managers rely heavily on constant meetings, endless reporting, and obsessive data analysis just to force everyone's goals to align.
The friction is just immense.
It is. So law-based management introduces a solution called frictionless encapsulation.
Okay, let me try an analogy here to see if I am grasping frictionless encapsulation.
Let's hear it.
Think about a complex, open-world video game. When your character jumps off a cliff in the game, you fall. But there isn't a referee sitting inside the computer who has to hit pause, call a cross-functional meeting with the graphics department, check a spreadsheet, and then manually drag your character down to the ground.
No, definitely not.
The rule of gravity is just encapsulated into the game's physics engine. The environment just knows what to do automatically. Is that kind of what encapsulation means here?
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. But let's actually take that video game analogy one step further. The reason the game runs so seamlessly is because the developers spent years obsessively coding the physics engine before the game ever launched.
Ah, right.
Frictionless encapsulation in business doesn't mean no work. It means radically front-loading the structural work. In a traditional company, every time you want to launch a new initiative, you have to schedule a 1-hour alignment meeting with 5 different departments.
The friction cost of just trying to communicate is huge.
Exactly. By embedding the business logic directly into the underlying ecosystem, by doing the hard work up front to design that perfect triangular alignment of incentives and that perpetual motion flywheel, you eliminate the need for ongoing alignment meetings.
That's incredible.
The logic is encapsulated in the compensation, the software tools, and the resource allocations.
Yeah.
People don't need to meet for 3 hours to figure out what to do because the environment mathematically pulls them toward the correct action.
It is the death of the alignment meeting.
It really is.
You just made a lot of our listeners very, very happy. But it also changes the job description of leadership entirely.
Completely. You start managing people and you start managing the environment.
So if we synthesize this massive, complex text into an ultimate takeaway, it really comes down to the identity of the professional.
Yeah.
System managers, the people trapped in the old paradigm, build walls. They manipulate static metrics. They accidentally drive away top talent because the environment is bureaucratic and suffocating. They spend their entire careers acting as exhausted system repairmen, running around with a wrench, putting out fires and fixing broken gears.
And the real tragedy of system thinking is that you can work incredibly hard, putting in 80-hour weeks, but you are ultimately just repairing a fundamentally flawed machine. Law-based managers step back from the machine. They become what the text calls commercial law scientists. They seek out the first principles of commerce and human nature, and they design self-running engines based on the natural laws of gravity. Growth becomes a natural byproduct of the environment, not the result of a manager yelling through a megaphone.
It is such a profound shift in perspective, going from repairing a broken clock to designing a gravitational field.
It is. And this framework doesn't just have to apply to Fortune 500 companies or, startup tech teams.
Yeah.
I really want to leave you with a different way to think about this as we wrap up today. Apply this law-based thinking to your own personal life.
Oh, taking it out of the boardroom. I love this.
Look at how you manage your household or how you try to build personal habits. Are you using system thinking on yourself?
Guilty.
Right? Are you trying to force yourself to go to the gym by relying on pure willpower and setting rigid, miserable rules that you eventually break? That is top-down pressure. That is one-man rule anxiety in your own brain.
Wow.
What would it look like to apply frictionless encapsulation to your personal goals? How can you redesign your physical environment or align your personal incentives so that the easiest, most natural thing to do is the exact habit you're trying to build?
Stop relying on willpower to force the gears to turn and start tilting the floor of your own life.
Exactly.
That is an incredibly powerful thought to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We took some intensely complex source material today and hopefully turned it into a new lens for you to view both your work and your world. Keep questioning the systems around you, keep looking for the underlying laws, and we will catch you next time.